dura no dura karana ye tera me tera velena ubudha nana mana yudun yana maga vidalivana
Vishwaya Sisara Vishvavahini.
During the past week, we've had many politicians in our studios, in our Vishvavahini studios. That is following the Sri Lankan Prime Minister's Australian visit. But this morning, this Saturday morning, we are privileged to have a federal MP in our studios, Honourable Julian Hill, the Member of Parliament for Bruce. Julian, since graduating from Monash, or even during as a graduate, he was involved in politics, particularly Labour politics. And he has served as the Mayor of Port Phillip, and then since electing in 2016, he has served in many senior roles in many departments, like Department of Sustainability, Department of Development and Business Development, and the list goes on. But particularly important to us is that Julian is very well respected by the local community here, and he's a true friend of the Sri Lankan community. That is what is most important to us. And this morning, thank you for coming to our studios, Julian. Good morning.
Good morning, Bandu. Ayubowan.
Ayubowan. And I know, thank you for devoting some time to come to the studios this morning. I know you're in your busy schedules. I know that this evening you're attending a South Asian Business Affairs literary evening.
I am, and I've actually picked a poem to read. They don't know that yet, but I have a poem.
Ah, that's very good.
I'll see you tonight. We can read the poem.
That's what I told you. You're a true friend of the community. Now, usually when you go to interviews and so on, you talk high politics. Being a Saturday morning, I thought we'll concentrate on something else.
I'm very happy with that.
Because I know that you visited Sri Lanka with your daughter recently. Let's talk about that first,
Sure.
right? So, what were your sort of experiences on Sri Lanka and the general culture, and if you happen to meet any politicians and so on?
Sri Lanka is a country that I've always wanted to visit
Right.
for many years, because when I was at high school in Melbourne, my family hosted a student from Sri Lanka, from Kandy,
Right.
who lived with us for almost a year.
Right.
And for the rest of my mother's life, she visited Kandy for some months at a time and stayed with the family. So I was long overdue to go and see the family.
That's the connection.
Yeah, that was the family connection. So, in all of the multicultural electorate that I serve, the Sri Lankan culture is the most familiar and feels most like family.
Yeah, I know. I mean, even during your election campaign, I know most of the Sri Lankan people came in support of you.
We did have great support, which I was very grateful for.
Okay, so what are the sort of places you visited?
So I went to Kandy and
Yeah.
stayed with the family for a few days.
Yeah.
And while I was there, I was privileged to be hosted by the head monk at the Temple of the Sacred Tooth Relic. I've still got my blessing on. I've still got my little blessing on the wrist there. It's still going well.
Yes,
You got one
so
there?
do I, yes.
Yeah, very good. And it was pure luck, but I happened to be there the next day, was the quarterly elephant procession.
Oh, I see.
So that was a wonderful
Have you
experience.
had any pictures?
We do have some pictures. We do have some pictures.
So, so that picture that we are showing now
Yeah.
is at the temple, or?
That's right, that's at the temple, and that was the audience with the head monk at the temple and his administrators.
Right. Oh, you're very privileged, because usually people don't get to see the head monk.
We've got some connections. I actually have a couple of wonderful Sri Lankan staff who work with me in my electorate office,
Right.
Who helped organise the visit. There I am the next day on the elephant procession.
Yeah. Right. All right.
It's a beautiful, beautiful, peaceful place, the temple.
Right.
And we had a quick tour. There's the elephant. There were many elephants, of course.
Right.
I would love to go back one day for the very big annual festival.
Yes.
Candy's a crowded place.
Yeah.
And then that was at Parliament. We organised a visit, and I was hosted by the Speaker of the Parliament at the Parliament for a visit. I was struck, I must say, by the similarities between the Australian Parliament and the Sri Lankan Parliament. It's not all about colonialism, and the British rule is good, but we do both benefit from many legacies of a democratic parliamentary system,
yes,
and the committee structure, the way that the Parliament operates was incredibly familiar.
So, Julian, so what do you think about generally the culture of the Sri Lankan people? How do you...
Well, it's a culture that I find very welcoming.
Right.
I find it very interesting because of the ancient history and traditions and rituals, and there's always more to learn.
Right.
Sri Lanka also, of course, is a multicultural place.
Yes.
A blend of many different histories and religions and languages and cultures, and in that regard there's much that we can also learn from each other about how to maintain a peaceful society as Sri Lanka also rebuilds post the conflict.
Right. And also, Julian, I mean, in a short visit, you can't cover everything.
No.
I know, there are quite a history of, because Sri Lanka was under Portuguese and Dutch and British, there are quite a number of sort of cathedrals and nice Christian churches.
Yes.
And also Muslim has been, has been there for a long time, and there are various other places too. Next time, maybe you can visit those places too.
I hope so. My trip was a little more eventful than I would have wished because my daughter actually got ill. So my Sri Lankan friends were wonderful in supporting us because she had to be in hospital for a week.
Right.
So I learnt a little more about the Sri Lankan medical system that I would have liked, but we did receive great care.
Right, that's good to hear. And in the Parliament, so you got to meet some of our politicians.
I did, yes. Most importantly, I think the Speaker of the Parliament, who many years ago was the Mayor of Colombo.
Right.
He had been in business, so had an interesting perspective on Sri Lanka's society and development.
Yeah.
But this year actually is the 70th year of diplomatic relations between Australia and Sri Lanka.
Right.
So it's an important opportunity to reflect on what we have in common and how Australia can continue to support Sri Lanka's rebuilding process.
Right. See, last time I met you was in Canberra when our Prime Minister was there.
That's true. That was a week or two ago?
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, it's a sort of a surprise that our Prime Minister got a very warm welcome from the Australian Parliament and also from other places. Not often that he's the Prime Minister, not the head of the state is the President, but with all this 19-gun salute and that sort of thing. He was very well.
We share a parliamentary democracy and our head of government therefore is an important role. I wouldn't be surprised by that though, because I think there's genuine warmth between the Australian people and Sri Lanka, not just because of democratic traditions, but really because of the people connection. We have such a large Sri Lankan-born population in Australia that they've been part of our society's fabric for so long.
That's right.
And we do love Sri Lankan food. I'm a sucker for hoppers.
So everywhere that's why you come to all our functions.
Well, no, it's to see you, Bandu, and all of my good friends. But yeah, I do like string hoppers. Everyone knows that. It's
I know
true.
quite a lot of other people like Thelmo Langvilla, the current Speaker of our Victorian Parliament, has been there.
Yes.
And he's very good friends with our cricketing executives.
Yes.
And so on. So we have got quite a number of politicians very close to the Sri Lankan community here. We are very fortunate at that.
Yeah, well, it's a very well-established community that has made a wonderful contribution to Australia. Highly educated, good aspirations for their kids. So a really important part of our community.
Right. And Julian, now that's Sri Lanka, right?
That's Sri Lanka.
And then
until next time.
Until next time. So let's talk about not high politics, but just give us a little bit of glimpse of your political career, like, the first few months in your federal
Sure. So I was elected to the federal parliament in Australia last July. My electorate, there's 150 electorates in the Australian parliament, and mine is one of only two where a majority of people were born in another country. So 53% of people in my electorate are first-generation migrants from everywhere in the world.
Right.
That really shapes how you think about politics and your task of representing such a diverse community. So I've got a great commitment to working with all of multicultural communities and making sure that their settlement in Australia and their contribution to Australia is as strong as it can be,
Right.
and a deep respect for the economic contribution that migrants have made and continue to make for Australia. And then there's, migrant communities have the same aspirations really as any other Australian-born family. A better education for their kids, decent health care, and one of the big issues at the moment in Melbourne, of course, is the affordability of housing. How
That's right.
younger people going to afford to buy a house? So I've started doing some policy work on that this year in the Parliament.
Right. So that's purely on housing, purchasing houses or...
Purchasing and also rental. Not everyone wants to buy a house
Right.
for whatever reason,
Right.
but we've got a strange situation in Australia which has to change, where the most rational thing to do as a wealthy person is to go and bid up the cost of an existing house because of the tax breaks.
That's right.
And we do need to change that.
Right, that's good. So apart from that, when you take world politics,
Yeah.
so how do you see this, the Brexit, and how do you see that's affecting our economy here in Australia and so on?
Look, I think we're in a difficult time in global politics. I made a short speech in the Parliament actually last week on some of these issues, but fundamentally I think that the most important force that's underpinning that is economic inequality, the growing gap between the rich and the poor. And people are not stupid. Normal, everyday people, middle-class people can see that the very wealthy are getting richer and richer, and they're not paying their fair share of tax, and they're not contributing to society in the way that people would expect. So I think that's one of the dynamics that really underpins what we've seen with Brexit, with the rise of populism. The other 2 points that I'd make, though, is that if you look through history, the 1920s and 30s, populism's a scary thing. Because it can lead very quickly to authoritarianism and fascism, anti-democratic tendencies. And the rise of far-right parties in Australia, One Nation, populists always feed off real grievances. And so we must not call people who are voting for these parties racists. Some of them may be, but most are not. They've got real grievances, but they're being sold false solutions, because stopping trade and putting up walls and kicking migrants out is not going to create jobs.
That's right. Actually, when I met you the other day at the Parliament, I did happen to meet Pauline Hanson too.
Oh, did you?
Yes, I said hello to her. Anyway, so as you say, see, you're a Labour politician, so you're concentrating on those aspects that you were talking about. So how do you see the US, the new regime under Trump? What will that do to our part of our region?
Look, I think there's immense uncertainty, and foreign policy and defence are also some of my policy interests.
Yes.
We've got an almost unprecedented situation where the leader of our major strategic ally in Australia, I'll choose my words carefully, it appears at times that what is said cannot fully be relied on, and we're going to need to pause and wait and see what is done, because the rhetoric that we're getting or seeing for the American domestic audience is not necessarily going to be the same as what's actually happening. Now, for Australia, that means that we need to look at many scenarios. I am firmly of the view, though, that Australia needs a much more open, honest debate about the changes in Asia, the part of the world that we live in, and I see our future as firmly part of Asia.
Yes, actually, I mean, even in economic terms, there are few uncertainties, isn't it?
Indeed. So it's a more important time for foreign policy in Australia than it has been for many decades, given the changes in our region and also the changes and uncertainty with our major strategic ally. That said, I'm firmly committed, like all Labor politicians to maintaining the US alliance. Much good has come of it and will come of it, but I think we need to rebalance our focus on Asia.
So, Julian, we'd like to have you again to talk about more Australian or local political issues and what, as a politician, how you contribute to make our society a better one, right?
Sure.
And then I must thank one of the employees in your office, Janaki, for organizing this.
Yes.
So thank you for
Janaki is a very special person
right.
and a great partner.
I know, I mean, she's helping our local community in many ways.
She does.
Yeah. So, Julian, as I told you, you're a true friend of our community. So until I meet you this evening at this literary event.
Yes.
That's in Mulgrave community.
It is in Mulgrave.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Bandu.
Thank you very much.
दूर नो दूर करना हे तेरा में तेरा वेलेना उबुधा नैन मना युद्धुम यन मग बिडानिवना
विश्वय सिसारा विश्ववाहिनी